Hello, this is the Desert Cardinal, better known as Paul. Hope hope your day today is going okay. It's Friday, February the 12th, because Sunday is Valentine's Day. So, first two videos I did on mental illness, we're talking about acceptance, and I think we covered that pretty good. Kind of want to talk about an unfortunate side of mental illness today, briefly, um, and that's stigma. Um, Stigma is basically the attitude that people have that don't understand what it means to have a mental illness. You see it in the media. Um, uh, the media tends to, when there's a mass shooting or something like that, they tend to jump to the conclusion right away that the individual that committed the crime, had some kind of mental disorder or something, and that's true in a lot of the cases. But my understanding of the statistics are that the number of violent people that are mentally ill is very small compared to uh, all the rest of the people that suffer from mental illness. And so it kind of paints a picture of a crazed person with a gun going around crazy or whatever. And even that word crazy, for some people, um, they don't like that. Me personally, I say it all the time, and I'm not really sensitive to that, but there are people that are sensitive to it. And um but you know I think one of the areas where stigma has the most impact on our lives is in the area of our family and close personal relationships. um, a lot of times members of our family just don't understand what it means to be mentally ill, what it means to have bipolar disorder or PTSD or anxiety disorder, or depression or OCD, or whatever it is that you may struggle with. And unfortunately, uh, that stigma can lead to broken relationships in the family. The stigma can lead to assumptions by other family members about the person's suffering that just aren't true. Um, for example, in my family, uh, I was diagnosed in 2012. I told you guys the last couple of videos, and um right after I started going outpatient, my father had passed away, and we had the funeral and all that, and I wasn't in a very good place. I was still in a real intense mania, and my therapist at the treatment center had said it was a good idea for me to separate from my family for a time. And so I was living with my mom, and then after my dad died, my mom, we would talk, and she said, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here, and it'll make it easier for me." And my brother and my brother-in-law and my other brother-in-law, they all got together, and they decided that because I had bipolar disorder, that I can't stay with my mom, because being bipolar means that you're going to go and spend a lot of money. And so I would take advantage of my mom and take her money. And so they said I couldn't stay there. And of course, my mom wasn't there. They had my sister conveniently take her away while they did this confrontation. and still sore about it. And that was back in 2012. And but that all that has to do with is stigma, because they were convinced, because I had bipolar disorder, that I was going to take advantage of my grieving mother and take all her money, because when you have bipolar, you spend a lot of money. And and that's true. When you are, well, that's not true. Okay. When you're in a manic episode of bipolar disorder, a lot of the times people tend to spend money excessively. And some people do, some people don't. Some people get into hypersexuality, and some people do, and some people don't. Um, some people have grandiose, delusional kind of thinking. Some people do, some people don't. Um, I hallucinate, and I was scared, when I started hallucinating, the first time, and I was meeting with my mental health worker, and check on the time here, and and I was shocked when I discovered that having hallucinations is can be part of having bipolar disorder. But it doesn't happen all the time, and just like spending money, um, excessively, uh, doesn't happen all the time, and some people do and some people don't. But the stigma was there, and so you know, people in my family, my brother, my two brother-in-laws, and my brother, my half brother actually, and my half sister, um, they were convinced that I was going to do this, and so they wouldn't allow me to stay with my mom. And and the ironic thing is that not long after that, my mom fell, and she had a punctured lung and laid on the floor for several hours before somebody came. And I had been talking to her every morning, calling her on the phone. And I called and called and called that day, and she wasn't answering. I thought, oh, well, maybe she's sleeping, getting some rest. And finally, I went over there, and I found her laying on the floor, and she didn't even know who I was. Um, she had gone to the bathroom on herself. There was tables turned over and lampshades, and I think to this day, that damn stigma on bipolar disorder, that if that whole situation hadn't have happened, maybe I would have been living there still, and maybe my mom wouldn't have been in that situation, because after that she pretty much went downhill. And it took about a year, and then well, no, it took a lot longer than that, but you know that's just a perfect example of what stigma does. And for people who don't suffer with bipolar disorder, or mental illness, it's very easy to make these assumptions based on what they see in the media, or what they may understand, that just isn't true. And it's the source of many broken relationships in the family, many broken relationships in personal relationships, and uh, it's you deal with it, all the time, and you know if you go up to somebody and you say, I I have MS, and it's difficult for me to get around, and I have to use a cane, and you're going to engender a sense of empathy from that other person. They'll feel sorry for you and empathize with you, and but you know you tell somebody you have a mental illness, and you know more often than not, they're going to think right away that you're just a crazy person. And um, and that's something you need to be prepared for, to deal with. And it's every time it happens, it still shocks me. Um, like yesterday, my mental health worker was supposed to come see me, um, uh, uh, for our weekly visit, and she never called. And, you know, somebody that's struggling with a mental illness that meets with a social worker once a week, you know, you would think that there would be something set up to let that person know that the social worker wouldn't be coming, because her not coming yesterday, I was expecting her to come and she never showed up, and it just sent me for a loop. You know, I got really angry, I got really upset, you know, and you know, and she called me this morning and apologized and said that she had been sick. And but you know, she could have very easily called yesterday and said, hey, I'm not going to be able to make it, and I just want to let you know. And you know, you have to be careful about how you treat people with mental illness. People don't have to walk on eggshells, but you know, there needs to be an understanding. Um, you know, in government workers and hospitals. You know, in hospitals. Um, you know, I was in a hospital for edema. My legs had swollen up really, really bad, and I went, and they took real good care of me, and they got me on some medicine and got the swelling down, and you know, and I was fixing to leave, and I had to go through billing department, and the lady was just really, really rude, and I found a hospital administrator right after that, and I said, you know, ma'am, you know, your hospital's great as far as the doctors and the nurses. You know, they treated me really well, and I got really good care, and I felt like I was cared for and was treated with dignity. But I said, you know, in your billing department, you need to train your employees on how to deal with people that have a mental illness. I have an anxiety disorder, I have PTSD, I have bipolar disorder, and you've got this lady working in the billing department that's, you know, kind of a firecracker, and, you know, triggering me and God only knows who else. And you don't need that, you know. And there, that's another example of stigma, where you know, people don't stop and think about, you know, the way they talk to somebody, or the way they look at somebody, or the way that they treat somebody, that, you know, that person may be struggling with a mental illness. And you know, if you look at them the wrong way, or you treat them horribly or something, you know, it's going to trigger them. And I think politically the climate's changing, but I read something just a couple of days ago that the state of Texas spends more money on mental health care in the prison system than they do in the general population. And that's ridiculous. That has got to change, you know, and people, you know, we need to rise up, you know, as a community, as a force in society, and say enough is enough. You know, that we can't be kicked to the curb anymore. That we need care. That we need services. And you know, can you imagine in Texas, here in Texas, they spend more money on mental health in the prison system than they do for the general population. That's crazy. And you know, so yeah, stigma. Uh, you know, do some research on the internet about it. And as always, I said in my videos, um, we need to remember the present moment, the right now. That all we have in our life is right now. And if we stay in the moment and we do everything we can to absorb everything that's around us in the moment, um, and then just do the next right thing, um, things tend to go a little bit easier. And that's kind of my mantra, I guess. Um, and I hope this video um, was encouraging and informative to you. And we'll talk to you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.